Hello everybody and welcome back to part 3 of the Hangman Pygame tutorial series. In this video we're going to be finishing up this game, so we're going to be adding of course the text to the screen that shows what letters we've guessed so far, how long the word is, we need to display that. We're going to handle if the user has won or if they've lost, and then we'll do a few small cosmetic changes just to make this look a little bit nicer. So with that being said, the first thing I want to do is I want to actually implement now some kind of word that we're going to be guessing. Because obviously right now all we have is a bunch of letters. You can see I've been pressing them here, and that's all they do. We don't have any real idea of actually making a guess. The Hangman guy doesn't even add any limbs or anything like that, so we need to do that. So let's actually get started, and with our first step, I'm going to go here to game variables, and I'm going to define the word that I want to use for this game. Now, I will show you guys later on how we can randomly generate some words, or how we can pick from a random word from a list of words. But for now, let's just go with one word. This will be easier. And next, what I'm going to do under here is I'm going to say guessed. So I'm going to put guessed like that equals a blank list. Now, this is going to represent what letters we've guessed so far. And the reason we want to do this is because we want to keep track of what letters we've already guessed so that we can accurately display this word. The idea behind this is that given a word like this, right, we can't just print developer on the screen. What we actually need to do is we need to print something that tells us how many letters are in this word and shows us the letters we've guessed so far. So really, like, let's say we had the letter D inside of this list, then what we would want to show is we want to show D and then a bunch of underscores, and that many underscores would be the rest of the letters in developer. So that's what we're going to try to show on the screen. We're going to try to space this word out first of all so it's easier to see, because if you just put a bunch of underscores combined, you don't know how many letters that is, obviously, right? And then from there, the user will be able to see what the word is and how many letters they've guessed so far. So hopefully that makes sense, but regardless, we have these two variables. Let's define them. You can make this word whatever you want, by the way. It doesn't matter. Just make sure it's all capitals. And we'll go down here into our draw loop, and I'll make a comment. I'm going to say draw word. And we're going to set up a for loop and start drawing some words. So the first thing I'm going to say is display underscore word equals a blank string. We're going to be building a string here. So essentially, this is what's going to store our translation of this word developer into what it should really be displayed on the screen. All right, so display word equals blank string. We're going to say for letter in word. So we can actually loop through all of the letters in this word. So every loop, there'll be a different character that will be stored in letter. And what we're going to do is we're going to check if that letter is inside of guessed. So essentially, have we guessed this letter yet? If we have, let's display it. Otherwise, let's not. So if letter in, and let's see if it gives me guessed here. So if letter in guessed, then what we'll do is we'll say display word plus equals, and we'll put the letter. So we'll say letter plus, and then a space. The reason we're doing a space, and let me bring this out here, sorry, is because the next letter that we draw, we want it to be spaced out by 1. So we're just going to tack on that space at the end so that when we build this string, let's say that first one was D, then it would go D, and there would be a space afterwards. Okay, anyways, so if that's not true, so if the letter is not in guessed, if we haven't guessed it yet, then we're not going to display it. So what we're going to say is display word plus equals, and we're actually going to do underscore space. So here, same thing again, we tack on that space at the end, but instead of actually putting a letter, we'll just put an underscore as kind of a blank, like we don't know what this is yet because we haven't guessed it. And then finally, all we need to do is actually render this word and display it on the screen. So I actually want to see what font I'm using for this. I think we're just going to use letter font. Actually, let me see here one second, guys. I'm actually going to go ahead and make a new font, sorry. So let's go to font here, and let's call this word underscore font. And it's actually going to be the exact same as this, except it's just going to have a different size. So I'm going to make this a bit bigger. I'm going to make that 60, just so it shows up a little bit more. All right, so now we're going to go down here, and we're going to say text, text is fine, equals word font dot render. And then inside of here, we're going to render the display word anti-aliasing 1. And then what color do we want to render this with? Well, this is going to be black, like that. All right, So now we have this rendered, and now all we need to do is actually draw this text on the screen. So we're going to say win.blit, we're going to say text, and we need to pick where this is going to go. Now we're just going to hard code this position because it's not super important that it's like perfectly center. In fact, it won't be perfectly center. So I'm going to put this at 400, 200. Now keep in mind that if you have a word that's really long, you might need to shrink your font size a little bit. So this is where we have to be careful. This could technically go off the screen if our word was really long, but for our word here, it shouldn't be a problem. So in fact, with that, if we finish that, what I think we can do is refresh now, and we should be able to see this actually popping up on the screen once this loads up. And perfect, you see that we can actually see this showing up right here. So we have all the underscores, there's a little space between them so we can actually differentiate how many characters are in this word. And now what we need to do is make it so that when we actually press one of these letters, it gets added into the guest letters so that this updates. In fact, let me just show you before we even do that. Let's go to guest and let's put just the character D inside of there, and let's rerun this and let's see what this looks like. And there you go, D is showing up. Now let's go ahead and add the character E into guest letters. And keep in mind, it doesn't actually have to be in order. It doesn't matter where they are. So we can actually just add D like that. Let's see what this looks like now. And perfect, it's showing us all of the E's. So we're confident this is working. And now all we need to do is add those guest letters into this guest list. So we're going to go down here, and I'm going to go to where were we checking collision? Right down here. So this is, we collided if this if statement is true. So inside of here now, what I'm going to do is simply append this letter into the guest letters. So we're going to say guest like that, dot append, and in here we will simply put LTR, which will actually be the character or the letter that we're looking at in this collision loop. So hopefully you remember that from before. So now let's actually run this, and oops, I didn't mean to exit out of full screen, and you'll see that when I press on these buttons, it actually activates for the word, and it works pretty nicely. So let's look here. All right, so let's go D, and look, D shows up when I actually press that. Let me try V, boom, shows up when I press that. P shows up. L, that is in the word. M, that's not in the word, so it doesn't show up. So there we go. That is the basics to actually getting this to show up. So let's just see what happens now if I actually put all of the correct letters in here. Where's the R? Boom, we can see the entire word. So awesome. So that's working. Now we need to check what happens when we actually have made the entire word. And we also need to check if we click on a wrong letter, we need to add one to this Hangman guy, right? So he gets another lip. So first of all, let's go to where we have Hangman status, and let's change this back to 0 or 1, or actually, let's see, is 0 an option here? I think it was. Let's just run this one more time and see what 0 looks like. Awesome, yeah, so no limbs. And now what we want to do is make it so that if we guess an incorrect letter, we increase this. So to do that, we're going to go down here, and we'll guess letter.append. That's totally fine. We'll leave that here, and we'll say if LTR in word, that's as easy as it is, or actually, sorry, if LTR not in word, so essentially if we guess the letter that is not in the word, it's pretty straightforward to read, then all we'll do is we'll say hangman status plus equals 1. There we go, and this should do the job. So now let's have it run one more time, and let's see what happens when we guess a letter that is not in the word. All right, so let me guess F, and boom, we can see that now the Hangman guy has limbs added to him when we guess one that is not in the word. But if we guess a valid letter, it doesn't get added. That is all that's necessary to actually now have this game pretty much be functioning. I mean, if you think of it now, this game is actually fully functioning, except for the fact that we need to handle it when we win and when we lose. So to handle this is actually pretty straightforward. What we're going to do is inside of this while loop here, so outside of this massive for loop, which by the way, we usually don't want to have this many levels of indentation, but for our game, it's pretty simple, it's pretty small, so I'm okay with doing that. What we're going to do outside of this for loop now is check if the user won. So to check if the user won is actually pretty straightforward. All we have to do is see if all of the letters in guessed letters are in the, or sorry, if all of the letters in our word are in the guessed letters. If that's true, then we won the game. So what we're going to do is we're simply going to go here and we're going to say for letter in word, if letter not in word, then what we're going to do is I'm going to set a variable up here that says 1 equals true. And if the letter's not in word, then we're going to say 1 equals false. And we're going to break. Now, oops, I did this wrong. Sorry, letter not in guessed, not word. And what this is saying essentially is that we have this Boolean variable called 1. We're going to loop through all of the letters in our word, and we're going to see if this letter is not in the guessed letters. If it's not in the guessed letters, we're going to set 1 equal to false, and we're going to break out of this for loop. So the break keyword simply says wherever we are in this loop, just immediately exit. So just go down to the end of the for loop. That's what it says. And that's as straightforward as it is, right? Because what will happen here is that if this never happens, so if we loop through every letter in our word, and all of these letters are actually in guessed, then 1 will never be set to false, so it will stay true. So then all we have to do here is say if 1, like that, and then we can do whatever we want to do. In this case, I'm just going to print 1. Now, we'll change this so we do something else, but this is as easy as it is to check if we actually won. It's not the most efficient way to do this. There is better code that we could write, but for our purposes, this is totally fine. I'm not worried about making the most efficient program in the world. We just want something that functions, and this does the job. So there we go. All right, so now that we have that, the next thing I want to do is check if we lost. So this is actually really easy. All we have to do is simply say if hangman status equals, and I believe the maximum status is 6. So when you have full limbs, I think 6 is correct. If you have full limbs, then that means you lost. That's pretty much it. If you get to the point where you have all your hangman limbs filled up, then you lost. So that's all we need to do. And inside of here, we'll actually display some stuff and we'll draw things on the screen. But for now, let's just see if this actually works and if we get those print statements triggering. So let's run this here. And let's see if we can win and if we can lose. All right, so DE, let's go for the win first. So DEVLOP, and where are we looking? Is there an E? Oh, I just need the R. Awesome. And boom, it just prints 1 a bunch of times, right? And that's as easy as it is. Now, of course, when we win, we don't want to just keep constantly printing that. We want to reset the game or do something like that. So I'm going to start by just putting a break here. And what this is going to do is just jump us out of this while loop, which essentially will just quit the game. Now, of course, that's not what we want right now, but putting a break inside of here is a decent start, and you'll see why in a second. So now let's just make sure that the loss is working before we go too far, and I do have that break statement, so now it should only actually print out 1 time. So let's move that, and let's just click a bunch of letters here and see if we can lose. And there we go, boom, we just lost, right? It just quit the screen, and you can see it printed lost. Okay, so now let's actually pop up some text on the screen and let the user know what happened rather than just immediately quitting the game. So what we're going to do is we are going to go in here and we're simply going to render some font in the middle of the screen that says, hey, you lost, or hey, you won, or whatever it was. So to do this, I'm simply going to say text equals, and then I guess we'll do word font, which is one we've already defined, dot render, and we'll say you won, exclamation point, and then that's going to be 1. We'll put that in the color black, and all we'll do now is just draw this on the screen. So we'll simply say win.blit text. Then we're going to put this right in the middle of the screen. Do we remember how to do that? Well, the equation we've used is width minus text dot get underscore width over 2. So I believe this is actually width over 2. Yeah, so this should be width over 2, sorry, minus text dot get underscore width over 2. I think that's right if I'm not messing this up. And then that's going to be height over 2 minus text dot get underscore height over 2. Again, could have made a mistake here, and this should be, sorry, a comma, not a period, but that should display it on the screen. And then all I'm going to do is say pygame.display. Is this not popping up? Okay, pygame.display.update, so that updates the screen. And actually, before we do all of this, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say win.fill, and we're going to fill this simply with the color white, so we just override everything that was on the screen, and then we draw this font on the screen, and we update the display. And finally, what we do is we delay, so we're going to say pygame.time.delay. I think this is how you do it. Yeah, pygame.time.delay. We'll see if that's correct, and I'm going to delay for 3 seconds. So what pygame.time.delay does is essentially tell us, hey, just don't do anything for 3 seconds, which means we'll see this text on the screen for 3 seconds. So let's see if this works. I could have messed something up here with the syntax, but let's give it a shot. Okay, so let me go And it looks like I didn't mess anything up, at least I think. We'll see. And let's see if we can win here. So DEVLOR, we need like that, and we need a P. Where's the P? Awesome, and then it displays you won for 3 seconds, and wait, and then it quits the game. So you won works fine, so all we need to do is pretty much copy this code for you lose, right? Now what I'm actually going to do is, since this is going to be pretty much the exact same for you lost, I'm going to put this into a function. Now I've been trying to avoid using too many functions just because this is a beginner series and I don't want to go too far into complicated things, but I think this will be easy enough that we can pick it up and we have enough time to explain it. So I'm going to say define display underscore message. So essentially, let's show whatever message is the parameter message. So I'm just going to paste all of this into this function, and don't worry, I'll explain what this is doing in a second, but you should hopefully see right away why this is pretty valuable to do. So what I'm going to do is replace u1 here with message, which I've put inside of this function as what's known as a parameter. So let me do that first, and let me explain what this does. So this is a function, and essentially what this means is we can reuse this multiple times. So just like we've been calling draw a bunch of times from within our while loop, because every time the while loop runs, we call draw, we're going to do the same thing with display message whenever we win or whenever we lose. Now message, what I'm doing here is essentially saying that every time when I call this function, I need to pass some value for message. Now in this case, we're going to pass a string, and what I'm going to do if I call display message is I'm going to do display message, and I'm going to actually put whatever I want to display. So if I put u1, then what will happen, if we put this in all capitals here, is that message will be equal to u1. So when we come into this function and we render font, we're going to render the message, which is u1. And then let's say we call this another time and we change this text to say you lost, then in that instance, it will render you lost, and it will just do the same thing. That's what I'm trying to get at here with that function. So this is known as a parameter, and we pass a value to the function that this parameter will hold, and you can think of it as a variable, like message will be equal to whatever we pass in. Okay, so now that we understand that, what I'm going to do is go inside of if1 here and simply type display message, and then inside of here, I'm just going to put u1 exclamation point. Now let's copy this and let's go down to you lost, and let's just change the message to say you lost. So now it will do the exact same thing in won and lost, except we'll just display a different message. So that immediately cleans all this code up so nicely and means that we can reuse this without having to keep copying and pasting all of this code all over the program. And that's one of the reasons I made this draw function too, is just to keep everything kind of contained in where it's actually happening, right? Because if we took all this code out of the function and we just put it inside of this main while loop, you can see it's going to start getting really messy really quickly, and there's going to be a lot of clutter just everywhere. So let's run this, and let's see if this is working. All right, so DE, let's actually try to lose here, see if that works, and you lost. There we go. Now what we can do if we'd like as well is before we go ahead and start drawing over the entire screen, maybe we'll delay for about 1 second so that the user can actually see what happened. So let's do that. Let's go up into display message, where if I can find this function. Let's take our pygame.time.delay, and let's delay for 1 second. So if I didn't mention this, this is milliseconds inside of here. So if you put 1,000, that's 1 second. So that's the easiest way to determine. If you wanted to do like a bunch of seconds or a few minutes, just multiply 1,000 by however many, I guess, seconds that you want to do this for. So now we have a 1 second delay, which means we'll wait 1 second before we draw all of this stuff, and that should be working fine. Now the next thing that I want to do is actually display a kind of title font at the top that says something, and then we'll talk about actually randomly changing this word, which is pretty easy to do. So the first thing I'm going to do is make a title font. I'm going to say title underscore font equals, and we're going to copy this, and I'm just going to make it 10 bigger, so I'm going to make it 70. Now, inside of my draw, we'll just always draw some kind of title that says something. In my case, I'm going to draw developer Hangman, but you're welcome to draw whatever you want. So I'm going to say draw title. I'm going to say text equals, and in this case, we're going to say title font dot render. I'm going to say developer Hangman. We're going to go 1, and we're going to go with the color black, like that. And then to draw this, we're going to say win.blit text, and we need to put this in some location. I want this to be centered, so I'm going to do the same thing with the X that I usually do. So I'm going to say width over 2 minus text.get underscore width over 2. And then for the height, I want it to be really close to the top of the screen. So I'm just going to make it at 20 pixels. And we can modify this height if we find it's too low or it's too high. So that's all we need to do to draw the title. So let's have a look at what the title looks like now. And apologize if I'm going quickly, but we have covered a lot of the stuff now. So I think it's okay to kind of skip through it a little bit. So let's look at this, and now we see Developer Hangman. Immediately, in my opinion, this looks a lot nicer already. We have our word, and then we can go ahead and we can see that all of this is functioning, and let's see what happens if we lose. And it says, boom, you lost. There you go. So that is the basics of this game. Now, of course, there's a few other things we can add. What I will do now is show you how we can randomly select words. This is actually really easy to do. All we have to do is make a list called words and just put in whatever words you want in all capitals. So I'm just going to say hello. I'm going to say Python. I'm going to say Pygame. Notice that I called it Developer Hangman. So actually, let's do hello world or something like that. Actually, we haven't really implemented it, so we can do words with spaces. I don't know if we'll have enough time to do that, so I'm just going to ignore the spaces for now. So rather than hello world, we'll go Python, Pygame, let's do IDE, let's do repl.it because that's the platform that we're working on. So let's just go replit like that. And I think that should be good for now. So all we have to do actually, if we want to randomly select one of the words from this word list every time we boot the program, is go up to the top. In our imports, we're going to import a module called random, and you're going to see how really easy this is to actually do. So we have the random module. Now let's go to where a word is defined. So I believe that's right here. And rather than having developer, what I'll do is I'll say random.choice words. And all this does is it randomly selects one of the words from the words list and just puts it into the word variable. So that's what random.choice does, is it looks at a list and it just randomly selects one element from it. So now let's run this and see what word we get. Let's have a look. And well, it's only 3 words, or 3 letters, sorry. So I believe that's probably going to be IDE. And there we go, we won. Now I'm realizing that there's a small bug, and that when we actually press the U1 thing, we don't get to see the last letter show up. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take this U1 and U lost, and I'm going to put it, this is actually a decent question here, that what we should do. Because I don't want to display, the idea that I'm getting at, sorry guys if I'm just mumbling here, is that I want to actually see what happens before we just show, you won or you lost. Because right now, it just kind of skips actually showing that last letter, and I would like to be able to see that. So the way that we're going to have to do that is to make sure that we actually redraw the screen again before we display this message so that we can actually see what's changed. So what I'm going to do is, before I display the messages here, I'm actually just going to take this draw loop, and I'm going to put it below this for loop. So I'm going to leave the for loop up here, but right here I'm going to put draw. The reason for this is now when we click on something, we will update the screen immediately, and then we will do this. So we will actually be able to see the change, rather than drawing first and then waiting till the next loop to update. So hopefully that makes sense, but let's run it now and see if this looks much better. All right, so now we got a different word, again, random. I don't know what this one is. Let's guess some letters. E, I actually don't remember what I put for all of the words here. Let's go A, okay. Let's go T, no, U. So let's just try to lose here then. And notice, oh, G worked there, okay. Let's go K, and then we see the last limb, and then we lost. So now this is working properly. All right, so the last thing to really discuss is how we can make it so that when we lose, it doesn't just quit the game, we can restart the game. Now, unfortunately, this is a little bit more difficult than I would like, and it kind of requires you asking, like, do you want to play the game, setting up a main menu? So what I'm going to do is kind of leave this as a challenge for you guys if you want to figure this out yourself, but I will give you a kind of some hints. The first thing you're going to want to likely do is put this while loop here into its own function. So you're going to want to do this, something like define main, like that. You're going to take all of this code, put it into a function. You're going to take this pygame.quit, and leave it actually at the end of the program. And right before this, you're going to call main. So now, if I actually do this, everything will work fine, except some of these variables here that you see, we'll need to put inside of this loop. So now, like FPS, clock, we're going to have to take those that we define there and define them inside of this function. So again, this is optional. You guys don't have to do this. We pretty much finished the game. I just want to show you how we can go ahead and do this. Now, again, something like this hangman status. Notice how I'm getting a red squiggly and it's saying, oh, you don't have access to that. Now, this isn't the best way to do this, but for games, it's fine. We can use what's known as the global keyword. This isn't best practice, but it's totally fine for this game. And we just write global hangman status. And now what this allows us to do is treat this variable like a global variable and be able to access it from within this loop. That's what that lets us do. And you'll actually notice that now that I've put this inside of a function, I added global and I added my 3 variables in here, I can press run and let's see what happens. And everything works as it normally would work and there's nothing wrong. So we successfully just translated this into a function. Now, the reason I'm saying this is because what you can do is you can make a while loop outside of here, and you can say while true, run this main loop. Now, what this essentially will do is just keep running this while loop infinitely. And the only way you'll be able to quit is actually if you completely quit the Python program. So what I usually like to do is inside of this while loop, I like to put something that says, would you like to play? And wait for them to press any button on their mouse. And we've seen how to do that. You can do a for event loop in here. So you can say for event in pygame.event.get, just like we've done inside of here. You can copy that into here. You can see if they press anything on their mouse. And then you can go ahead and actually run this main function, which will start the game. Now, after you run that main function, though, what you'll need to do is reset a few variables. So you're going to have to repick, for example, the hangman status. You're going to have to choose another word, and you're going to have to reset this guest variable list. So this isn't the easiest thing in the world to do, but it's definitely very doable, and that's why I'm kind of leaving it as a challenge, because I don't want to go through doing all of it right now, but hopefully that gives you enough of an idea to the point where if you want to do this, you can. So last thing I'm going to do is just zoom all the way out here and show you guys kind of all this code, or show you most of it just by slowly scrolling through. So if you need to see anything, again, you can see all of it here. But that has pretty much been it for this Hangman Pygame tutorial series. We've got a fully functioning Hangman game. I think it works pretty well. You can customize it however you like. You can make longer words, bigger words. You can change the color of the buttons. And hopefully I've taught you guys enough about Pygame that you feel confident to go out and make your own little games. So with that being said, that has been the end of this series. If you did enjoy, please do make sure you leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and of course, let me know what else you want to see in future videos in the comments down below.